was just a real character. He made a big impression on us.
He was so drunk, wasn't he?
Yeah.
What a wonderful backstory. Planet Guitar would like to welcome guitarist Louise Borlase and Anton Pearson from Squid.
How are you doing?
Thanks for joining us today. I'd like to kick off straight away by talking about your futuristic sounding new album, Monolith, which is out on June the 9th. Could you tell me what inspired the title?
I think with this album we were kind of like quite keen to make things deliberately ambiguous. So yeah, we kind of landed on that as a kind of like, yeah, it was kind of a mixture of that and also feeling like it was kind of a big undertaking, the project that we had set ourselves. So yeah, that's kind of like what we were thinking at the time. Yeah.
And the word monolith, where did that come from?
I'm not sure where the word originally comes from exactly, but it has a basis in, you know, modern and ancient society at the same time. Sometimes it's made of, you know, monolithic geological formations, and sometimes they're man-made. I think we were quite interested by that push and pull between the two of them.
How would you say that the album differs in musical style from Bright Green Field?
I think it's a bit richer, maybe a bit more. It's a bit more kind of based around more interconnecting melodies than the last one. Slightly. I mean, you know, I don't think we've gone and made something that's like a million miles away, but hopefully something that's a development on projects we've worked on before. It's a little bit more of a kind of, I don't know how to say it. It's a bit more like a patchwork, I guess. The textures of all the sounds kind of differ track by track, and that's kind of reflected by how we recorded it, I guess. You know, naturally songs on an album are often going to sound different when you have quite a few people in the band that want to, you know, try out using a specific instrument just for one of the tracks and then turn to something else for another. So there's quite a lot going on, I'd say.
I understand the books and films served as inspiration on the first album. Can you say the same for this?
Yes, I think that's true. Both kind of lyrically and musically, I'd say. So yeah, I mean, kind of inspiration wise, sometimes it's a little bit complicated, like deciphering exactly where things came from with us, because we always write things all together as a five without really talking about without talking about inspiration as like an overarching thing per song. It's just that each of us comes back with our own ideas and just kind of just plays them without discussing it so much. So you know, we've all got independent lives and reading, watching, listening to different things, and sometimes we will talk about like pieces of music that we want to kind of borrow elements from or emulate in some way, but it's never a case of like we're writing a piece of music that we want to sound a certain way or do a certain thing. It's usually just like tiny little snippets from other things that we can import into what we're already doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I understand that in the first album you employed a medieval bassoon and producer Dan Covey's metal gate, I think, at one point. Do you have any similar stories on this album?
This time the order of the day was a man called Roger Bolton and his Fairlight computer synthesizer sampler. Overall kind of general enigma. It featured quite a lot on the album, and it belongs to Peter Gabriel and kind of lives near real world where we recorded. but it's programmed by a man called Roger Bolton, who we kind of overheard a conversation in the local pub when we were recording the album, and was interested by what we were working on. And he kind of struck up conversation with Arthur, who he's in our band, and they kind of went off and discussed how to explore this instrument and how to bring it in as a kind of textural tool that could layer sounds in, you know, many ways that we can't do just with our general instrumentation. And it ended up being a kind of really central point of the album, not just sonically, but, you know, in the kind of whole process of making the record and the people that we were around on a day-to-day basis when we were recording, the general kind of mood. And I think, you know, mostly it added a sense of slight enigma, kind of. I don't think I ever saw the instrument, but heard it, and it existed in a kind of much more removed setting than the big recording studio that we were in every day at Real World. It was somewhere separate, and I think that added to our appreciation of it. And yeah, it was a very rich sounding instrument and a great addition.
Great. Turning to a few specific tracks, Undergrowth was one of the pre-releases, written from the perspective of an afterlife in a chest of drawers, according to Ollie. Could you tell us about
that?
That's it. You nailed it.
Yeah, got quite interesting like themes of animism lyrically. Yeah, I don't really know what more to say about it.
I don't think I knew what it meant for quite a while,
yeah.
Any of the lyrics, until kind of the album's done, putting together a press release. So it didn't feel important to talk about it. I think what was more interesting to us as a band before the lyrics were fully formed as well was the sense that this track had existed among us for quite a while and had gone through various different lyrical reincarnations before it was fixed on the final, you know, song that it is now as it's released. And it was an interesting one for us because it was exploring a different kind of tempo and setup with bass and drums than we'd done before. You know, the bass line is played on synth throughout the whole track. There's no bass guitar in that tune, which was a first for us, really. So it was kind of a case of us trying to ask ourselves questions of how can we just generally shake up our compositional approach, you know, and the instrumentation we use. And, you know, freeing up bass meant that Laurie plays trumpet whilst we still have bass on synth. So it was just, a case of trying to do something new, I guess, with that tune.
I was quite intrigued by the lyric, put your thumb and fingers around my neck. Do you worry about what comes next?
Yeah, I think we all worry about what comes next, whether it's in hell or next week or just later on in the day. Yeah, it sounds a little bit suffocating, doesn't it, that lyric, I think?
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Well, I'll pass that on.
Okay. The Blades has a softer ending than we've come to expect. Was that a collective decision?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, all of the music we write is a collective decision. I think Louis and I just started playing is that kind of repeated riff over the kind of that ending. This kind of whenever we've played it all together, there's kind of like loads of reverb tails that kind of like lay over the end, and I think Louis and I just started playing that once over that ending. And
you never get it the same twice.
Yeah, what was quite nice about it was that every time we played it was a different sequence, because Louis and I had a kind of like series of chords that we were going through, and neither of us knew exactly how many we were doing. So every time we played it for months, it was different every time, and kind of nice in a different way each time, because the chords would kind of overlap, and sometimes it was like, oh, that one didn't work. But most of the time it was kind of weird and mysterious in a different way. And I don't think we ever decided exactly what we were going to do. So even the recording that's on the album is, was just like that moment. So the other takes would have sounded slightly different, but yeah, we liked it, that sort of thing in studio.
I have to say that I really loved Siphon's song with its distorted robotic lyrics at the start. Is that about alienation or artificial intelligence, for example?
In some respects, it's about alienation, yeah, but it doesn't look at artificial intelligence really. It's kind of more about the news and feeling a sense of compassion, fatigue from absorbing news online, and especially when you're away from your home and friends and family for a long time.
And another one, a big standout for me, was if you'd seen the bull's swimming attempts, you'd have stayed away. Can I ask where that title came from?
Yeah. It came from a few different things, one of which was we met a man called the Bull in Ireland who was really drunk at a hostel, and he was just a real character. He made a big impression on us.
He was so drunk, wasn't he?
What a wonderful backstory.
Yeah. He was very friendly though, and we got on very well.
And it's a great track. Does he know that it exists?
I doubt it.
Anton, you play a Fender Duosonic and Telecaster, and Louis, you play a Burns Marquis and Fender Jazzmaster. Did you consider any changes for our monolith?
Yeah, I actually recorded most of it on a Strat. Dan's got a nice, I think, it's late 70s, I think, Strat that I borrowed from him for most of the takes. Both of those guitars I use live, the Duosonic and the Telecaster, are on it in different points, but most of the live takes were done on a Strat. Yeah.
And no one's ever got the left-handed guitars, so I always just have to use mine.
Going back to your beginnings, could you both share what inspired you to first take up guitar? How old were you, and which guitars do you use?
I don't know how old I was, but I think I was probably about 12, 13, and I didn't have lessons, but just my dad plays, and I happened to be left-handed as well as him, so like there was always just a guitar around the house, and ultimate guitar abs and chord charts were just quite useful to learn tracks by Bryan Adams and Led Zeppelin. So yeah, just a lot of that.
And you, Anton?
I started playing so when I was about 8 or 9. I think my granny got me a guitar for Christmas, just like a little nylon string acoustic. And I was really fortunate to have a really good guitar teacher called Jack Torn when I was like in the ages of like 12 until I left home at 18 or something. So yeah.
I gather later on, you were, when you came together as a band, you were offered space in a Brighton jazz club, and I was wondering if that was because the owner knew that you were improvised and also used trumpet in your band. Was that the reason that you were kind of embraced by him?
Well, Laurie hadn't actually joined the band yet, so there was no trumpet, but at that point. But yeah, John Easterby became a really good friend of ours who used to run a club in Brighton called The Verdict. I don't know, I think it might still exist, but it's under different ownership now. But at the time, he was really up for letting younger bands musicians come in and use his space to put on nights kind of free of charge, and he used to let us keep the money on the door to reinvest it into putting the next one on. And then obviously you'd have lots of kind of 20-year-olds wanting to buy thousands of drinks at his bar, so it was kind of good for him as well in that respect. And then he was super supportive and really important in the formation of band that we are talking about. So yeah, John Easterby was a really important person for us.
Was Bright? I know that you started recording or started releasing material in 2017. But Bright Green Field seemed like a big step up. Was that reception a surprise?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're all. I mean, we've been surprised at like every stage of our careers.
In inverted commas.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when we first, it was around the time that before the Dial came out, was when we first like got like management. And I remember when we first chatted to them, like our ambition was to maybe one day play a couple of shows outside of the UK. So that was pretty, that felt amazing when we first did that. And when we first did like a tour, that felt pretty, we're still getting surprised by how far things have gone, because we never set out for this to be like a become our livelihoods or jobs. It's just kind of been really fortuitous that it's happened that way. I've been really lucky to meet certain people, and really lucky to have the time and space to be able to make music together, and really lucky that all of us have all five of us have been into the idea of doing that. So
it's just a phase.
So we're definitely really surprised by how things went with Bright Green Field, but that was kind of like a continuation of surprise that had happened for a long time. And also because of the pandemic, it made the album release a bit strange and not your normal album release. So I suppose we didn't really connect with the release of the album in maybe exactly the same way as we would have done in normal times, in terms of like playing live and meeting people and seeing people's reactions and doing press and things with in person and all that kind of stuff. I suppose we felt a little bit more distant from the reaction to maybe we would have done. Maybe that was good for us. I don't know.
You guys came together in Brighton, and then you spent a period in Bristol, in the Bristol area, and now I believe you're based in London. Is this? It's amazing that you're all moving together, or seems to be. Is that the case?
I actually live in Brighton. I moved back.
Okay.
So yeah, and Ollie's in Bristol still, and Laurie, and Arthur are living in South London. So yeah, we've got at least one of us in each of the places at any one time to just kind of hold things down, so we can claim whatever identity we want at any one time as being a Bristol band, a Brighton band, or a London band, I suppose. And yeah, so we haven't always moved together, but we've never been like too far away from each other. So at the moment, we do most of our rehearsing and writing in London, so that's quite easy for Ollie and I to get to on the train.
You've got a much more collaborative and respectful way of working than most bands. I really enjoyed reading that you like. It's important to you to listen to each other and respect each other's musical space. Um, then you established an independent label, Inc. I think to give free rein to your individual impulses. Is that all working as you hoped?
We're so busy with all the Squid stuff that we're not really doing that much, independently of the band at the moment in terms of separate releases. But I think that more than anything, it's a great thing that Warp were kind of able to let us talk about this space for individual projects that we can release as Inc. releases. Anton did an EP in lockdown under that, and I think we will in the future. It's just, I think the pace in which we're writing and all the space in between for touring, and then the whole summer festival season in Europe and the UK means I think we're a little bit busier with Squid than we thought we might be.
But it's great because of the way that you kind of come together, because many bands have a kind of more, one person is a clear leader and so on. It's great. It's almost like you've planned for moments when you will feel that you need space.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole kind of premise of what Squid is as a group of people writing music together, it just wouldn't be what it is under that kind of setup, in that no one ever comes with the idea of saying, here's a song I wrote, let's all learn it and then feel free to improvise around it. It's usually, look at this kind of fragment that I've just been thinking of, the very beginnings of something, that then when they play it, somebody adds their take on it on a different part, and it quite quickly becomes something that is very much like oriented in the 5-piece kind of counterpart of instruments. And it's always been that case, so kind of can't really imagine it in any other setup, unless someone has a kid or something and then has to be like, right, teach me the songs.
Cheryl Waters famously said on KEXP that Squid were one of the best bands she'd ever heard live. And I admit I shed a tear at the intensity of what you do. Are you surprised by sometimes the reaction of people?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And that was a really amazing thing to hear, and that was really kind of her to say that. I remember, I mean, that performance was great. We had fun doing that. It was kind of like towards the end of a tour, and we were really tired. And we'd driven in the morning, had no breakfast, and we were all kind of like quite nervous about that performance because it was something that we'd been wanting to do for a long time. I don't know. So that was kind of a lot of like delirious, excited energy that went into that.
I just thought it was going to go so badly.
Yeah, and we were all just kind of like, oh, that wasn't actually terrible at the end, and then
like looking around, kind of like the last note played, and then being like, actually, like, I think we kind of smashed it considering the lack of sleep. And she then really liked it.
Yeah, great. So that was great. Yeah, but yeah, we're always really pleased when people enjoy it. We're not the sort of band that's like, although we're trying to write things mostly for ourselves and do things that excite ourselves, we're not one of those bands that isn't at all bothered about how people feel when they listen to it. We're really pleased that people enjoy it.
When I listen to your music, I hear elements of Talking Heads and Can and Radiohead. But many say you're carving out a unique space. Do you feel that yourselves?
Yeah. Thanks very much. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, I suppose. Yeah.
They're all influences in different ways, but it's just a case of kind of those artists that you kind of pick out there, I guess, are are so different, and you can't really imagine them, you know, working well together. And I think that says maybe a lot about how our influence is always changing. I think like every time we have a new large scale musical project, we're kind of, there's often there's some kind of musical idea in mind that we kind of obsess over and latch on over. But at the moment it's a little, it's a little looser. I think it continues to get looser.
Well, finally, a monolith can represent to some people an evolutionary step or a gateway to the future. Where does Squid go next?
Back to the writing room.
Anton?
Yeah. Well, I mean, next we've got loads of touring coming up. So that's that's what we're thinking about at the moment, I think. Yeah.
Playing lots of tunes on a monolith that people haven't heard before, and seeing whether or not they like them and how hard they are to play live, as well as, wanting to be writing music all the time. A few different things to juggle, but I think it'll probably be a pretty fun summer.
What are your plans actually for the 2023 in terms of the tour?
So we've got lots of festivals over the summer, and then we've got a European tour starting at the start of September, and then a UK tour in October.
USA in February.
Yeah. So there's a lot coming up.
I mean, our monolith came out of your previous touring when you were promoting Bright Green Fields. So who knows what could happen on these tours?
Exactly.
Exciting times.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Guys, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it on Planet Guitar, and we wish you all the best.
See you later.